Greetings, everyone. Once again, is Motamonidi sharing with you the authentic truth brought to us by Zulula 100, the only teacher. So here is going to be part 2 of the God of Christian is not the true God, the proof. In the previous video, we did stop in Genesis 18 regarding the verse 20 and verse 21. So in this, because in Genesis 6:6, he said previously that the so-called Lord of the Bible did regret. So he changed his mind as well. In the other version, he changed his heart, and his heart was deeply troubled. He says, so the Lord of the Bible, the Lord, the so-called God that the Christian worship, has a heart, regret, change his mind. We see that in Genesis 6:6. We see as well in Amos 7:3. We also saw this in Jonah chapter 3 verse 10. But we know in Numbers 23:19, he did say that God is not a man, so he does not lie. He is not human, so he does not change his mind. So first, that God of the Bible seems to have a mind, and he keeps to be changing it all the time. Now we're gonna continue regarding in Genesis 18. So to give you the context a little bit, is regarding the 3 visitors. In Genesis 18:1, it says, the Lord appeared to Abraham near the tree of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day, period. So here you're told that the so-called Lord of the Bible, the so-called Jehovah, the so-called Yahweh, the so-called God that the Christian worship did appear to someone. And he appeared to who? He appeared to Abraham. Now, we know in 1 John chapter 4, verse 12, what does he say? He says that no one has seen God at any time. So in 1 John chapter 4 verse 12, it specified that no one has seen God at any time. So if no one has seen God, who did Abraham see? Who is that Lord? Question mark. So already you know that you see that the God that the Christians are worshiping, the God that can be seen, is not the true God. We also see that in John chapter 1 verse 18, which says no one has ever seen God, period. And when they wrote that, didn't they know that Abraham, the so-called Abraham, saw the so-called Lord of the Bible, the so-called God previously? Already you see confusions of the authors. So nevertheless, in Genesis 18:1, it says that Lord appeared to Abraham. Already mistakes or confusion. And when we go in verse 20, it says, then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin so grievous, verse 21, that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me, period. If not, I will know. So, and then in verse 22, the men, because there were 3 visitors, so, and then in verse 22, he says, the men turned away and went towards Sodom, but Abraham remained standing before the Lord, period. Okay, so you're told here that the so-called Lord, the so-called God of the Bible, the so-called Yahweh, he heard the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah. So he heard something. And he says, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous. In New Living Translation, the Lord told Abraham, I have heard a great outcry from Sodom and Gomorrah. comma, because their sin is so flagrant, period. So here it says that the sins of the inhabitants are so flagrant, is so grievous, and he heard the outcry. Now in verse 21 in the New International Version, it says that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me, period. If not, I will know. So the question is, doesn't the true God know everything? Why does he have to go down to see if what he has heard is true or not, did happen? So there's information that the so-called God that the Christians are worshiping that he's not aware of, that he needs to verify for himself. It's basically like a detective. Maybe a crime occurred somewhere. The detective heard the news, someone called him, he received the call. Oh, there's a crime, it's grievous, it's bad. He heard it on the phone. Now he has to go in person on the crime scene to verify for himself, to see for himself. That's a man, that's a detective in, or for example, in our era. But when we talk about the so-called God, it shouldn't be the same thing. He should already know everything. He shouldn't need to go somewhere to verify the information. That does not make sense. So that means it is somewhere and it is limited, it's contained somewhere. It doesn't have the information of exactly how it happens there. He needs to hear the news and he needs to go down. So that means when you're going down, that means you're not already down there, but you're going down and you're verifying for himself. So that means from where he is, he doesn't have access to that information. So some people have more information than the so-called God that the Christians are worshiping. That I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. I will. That's in the future. If not, I will know. That means he will know it in the future. Right now, he doesn't know if it's as bad as he has heard. Verse 21 in New Living Translation, I'm going to go down to see if their action is as wicked as I have heard. If not, I want to know. So the so-called God that the Christians are worshiping wants to know something. He has needs, basically. He wants to know. He wants to find out what happened. So he's limited in time and space because he will know something in the future. So that means he's in a sort of a present where he lacks knowledge. And then in the future, he's going to gain knowledge. So he's going to change. That's the notion of a mortal. That's a notion of someone that's limited, that learns things, that study basically. So people are going to teach him things. In Peshitta Holy Bible Translated, it says, I shall descend, semicolon, I shall see if they have done and they have fulfilled according to the belowing that has come to me, come. Otherwise, I shall know. Good News Translation. So here it says in the Good News Translation, I must go down to find out whether or not the accusation which I have heard are true. So the so-called God of the Christian must go down. When he says you must go down, that means it's an obligation. If he doesn't go down, he won't know what happened. So he has to do something, that so-called Lord of the Bible. He has to do this in order to gain information, to gain knowledge. So the Good News Translation, that's bad news right there. If your God is limited, if that's the type of abomination they're writing, they're limiting their so-called God, their so-called Lord, because they're describing a creature, they're describing someone that doesn't know everything, that's contained, that is limited in time and space. Old man Christians, before that, in Good News Translation, it said, I must go down to find out whether or not the accusation which I have heard are true. So he doesn't know if they are true. So he hears something and he doesn't know if what he has heard is true or not. And he has to go down to see who has written this. That's insane. That's insane. He has to go down to find out whether or not it's true. It's like you receive the news on the phone. Oh, something bad happened. Okay. Automatically, he doesn't know. He doesn't trust the source of where he got the news. He's like, okay, I need to verify for myself. He's like a journalist. You get to get multiple sources. You have to go there yourself, see it, witness it for yourself. That's how they're describing their so-called God, their so-called Yahweh. The so-called Jehovah Witnesses. Your God also has to witness something for him to believe that. So you're witnessing him, you so-called Jehovah Witness, you're his witness, but he himself has to witness things. Himself. He has to see. He has to verify. You're worshiping a creature, you're worshiping someone, you're worshiping a being. You're worshiping a false God. And it's the same way they're describing the God of the Christian, and the same thing, the Yahweh, all the religions, they're worshiping a false God. They have given attributes of their God, which is attribute of a mortal, which is attribute of someone that repent, that changes his mind, that doesn't see the future, that doesn't know everything, that's contained, that's limited, that is in time and space. But glory be to Loba, the only and unique creator, because he lived inexplicably out of all realities and even beyond the non-existence. Nothing can contain him. He knows everything. He's beyond everything you can imagine or conceive. He manifests knowledge. In Oldman Christian Standard Bible says, I will go down to see if what they have done justify the cry that has come up to me, period. So the outcry has come up to him, and he doesn't know if that's justified or not. He needs to go down. If not, I will find out, period. So that's the so-called Lord of the Bible. That's the so-called Yahweh. That's contained, that's limited. You see the foolishness in the current classical the Bible. All those mistakes, lies are not found in Bibèl, Galatambali. This is the source, the truth. Loba is the unique creator. He's out of time and space. And when he creates, he's out of his creation. He's not contained somewhere. You cannot say Loba is there. No. It's beyond all those notions. It's beyond the notion of the place. So, all of you out there who will go to churches on Sundays, who are going to worship a God, you're going to call him Lord, you're going to call him Yahweh. Some of you may call him Jesus, or whatever the name you're going to give him. Your so-called God, your so-called Christian God of the current classical day Bible, behind that, there are demons. Is Satan. Is the occult world. You're worshiping a false God. You're worshiping false gods, invented God that don't exist. You earn a lie. The unique creator is Loba. The only teacher, Zulula 100. That's the truth. So you're praying, if you're praying to that false God, those false God, look at the state of the world. Your prayer are not changing anything. Your prayer are in vain. Because your so-called God that you're praying to doesn't know everything. That's how he doesn't answer to you. That's why he's not answering to you. Because he himself is limited, is a false God, invented God. So stop believing in the lies, in the mistakes, in the contradictions that the so-called scribes have tried to put in the current classical Bible. The truth is restored, is here. The true teachings, the true knowledge. So that was part 2. All glory be to Loba, the unique creator.